Thank you, Senator, for the question. We are, as I said, we have only just received the data from CDPH. And also, as I said, we are not under the law allowed to see the name or address of the child with the elevated blood lead levels. That information is private under the state's medical privacy laws. What CDPH has been able to do is provide us with information based on census tract, which census tracts within that area have higher blood lead levels than other census tracts in that area, and we can focus our outreach efforts on those census tracts that have elevated blood lead levels compared to the others in the region. Again, within this year, within the year after the funds are available, we will test the soil at all 10,000 residential properties. And so we do expect to get to all of them, but we will go first to the areas where we believe the impacts are greater. And in fact, the initial assessment areas and the step-out areas for sampling were chosen based on the information we had available at the time to point us to where the impacts were likely to be greatest.
It doesn't require a response, but you would think there would be a mechanism where parents could voluntarily.
They can.
Their address for quick and.
They can let us know, and when they let us know, we do respond immediately. We put them to the top of the list. We sample the property, and we do the cleanup. The cleanup of the soil is driven by the presence of the lead in the soil. And so if we were to respond and find that there was no lead contamination in the soil, there is also a protocol. We refer the family to LA County Public Health, and they have the capacity to intervene and do an assessment of the residents to see if there is information about other sources of lead that could be the cause of the exposure.
Okay, and another quick question. Is there any culpability with the city of Vernon? Someone issued the permits. I realize Exide and its predecessor have been there over 30 years. Is there, a lot of these are local land use decisions all over the state being made by local governments, fully knowledgeable that there's homes either adjacent next door or they're approving homes adjacent to these kinds of incompatible facilities. So does Vernon, or is there any responsibility? Because we're going to be facing this all over the state. The state cleaning up after some very poor or short-sighted land use decisions.
So, Senator, I am not an attorney, and so I would probably not be the right person to answer whether there's liability on the part of the city of Vernon. I do know from my 25 years working for local government that there's a pretty strongly held belief at the local level that land use decisions are the purview of local government. That said, I do think we can all do better working together to improve land use decisions going forward. In the case of the Exide site, there has been industrial lead smelting at that site since the early 1900s. So I think that probably predates any land use planning that was done.
Final question is the 176 million or 78 million strictly for the testing, and then I assume the costs for the cleanup are going to be far more than that? Where does that come from?
The $176.6 million funds the testing of 10,000 properties and the cleanup of up to 2,500 properties that are determined to be the most contaminated, as well as the job skills training and the public engagement efforts.
All right.
Senator Pavley, the amount also includes funding for attorney's fees to recover the cost from the responsible party.
I'm just worried that we've just seen the beginning of this. Of course, having a state agency allow 30 years of without a full permit is alarming, and hopefully we don't have that going on anywhere else, because otherwise we'll be revisiting the same issue.
Director Lee, on that point, you've been very clear that if after the testing of 10,000, the remediation need is greater than 2,500, you will need more money.
Well, either we will need more money, or at that point in time, we will have the evidence needed to transition this to a responsible party-led
More
cleanup.
money will be needed because there could be thousands of additional properties that will need attention.
There could be.
Right. Okay. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Lee, we were noticed of this meeting, I think yesterday evening, and so with a full day, it's hard to prepare. So I didn't get a chance to research your department, so I want to ask just a few simple questions. I'm assuming that you have two budgets. One is your annual funding for administration, and the other is managing a trust fund to deal with toxic substance issues. Is that correct?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. There are two primary funds that the department draws its budget from. One is the hazardous waste control account, and the other is the toxic substances control account. And they have each around them allowable expenditures. The hazardous waste control account, generally speaking, funds the regulatory efforts around the facilities and the transport, facilities that generate, treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste, the transport of hazardous waste, and issues surrounding the management of hazardous waste. The toxic substances control account is the account out of which primarily we fund our efforts to oversee and implement site remediation activities, including cleanups at sites where there are responsible parties, where there are no responsible parties and it's a state orphan site, and also where we have developers or others step up to voluntarily undertake a cleanup of a property with the idea that the property will be worth more to them after it is cleaned up and they can develop or sell it at that point in time. In addition, we have a program that promotes the development of safer consumer products with less hazardous materials in them, and our Safer Consumer Products program is also funded out of the Toxic Substances Control account. Within the Toxic Substances Control account, a small amount of money, approximately $10 million each year, is transferred into our site remediation account, and that is the account that is, I think, what you refer to as the trust fund for cleanups. And that is for the cleanup of sites where there is no viable responsible party to pay for the cleanup. It is the state's equivalent to the Superfund sites nationally that have no responsibility, no responsible party, and those are federally funded cleanup sites. The site remediation account also provides the funding that we use to provide the state match for the cleanup of those federal Superfund sites, which we are required under law to do. So there's $10 million a year that pays for those activities.
So thanks for the complex answer. Let me try it a little differently. Do you have an annual amount that is included in the state budget to fund your department?
The total funding of the department out of those two accounts, I should know the number off the top of my head, but I don't offhand have it in front of me. But it is, I think, about $200 million.
So maybe I'd try it again. Are you in the state budget?
The department is part of the state's budget under the Cali PA budget, yes.
And then, so how much do you receive every year from the state budget? Because you're talking about getting funds from two trust.
Special funds.
Special funds.
So they're
So are you asking about, I'm sorry, are you asking about general funds to the
Trying to
department?
figure out who you are and what you do and how you're, funded to do it. And so, and then I want to know how are those funds funded, and then how much has been used and what your balance is, so I can kind of do the accounting a little bit. That's what
Roddy, do you want to help out here a little bit?
Sure, Ellen Marati, Department of Finance. All of this information is published in the governor's budget.
I know that, but you didn't give me any time to check one thing on, so I apologize.
Apologies for that. This is moving quickly. Director Lee is correct. Their spending is about $200 million. In terms of this appropriation, it would be pretty easy to track. It's being set up in a non-budget act item.
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
Okay, so we're using a fund to pay for the remediation of the Exide.
The way this is working is we're transferring general fund as a loan into the toxic substances control account.
And what's the balance currently in that account?
I think it's in the range of 25 to 30 million, but it's declining. The fund is structurally imbalanced.
Okay.
Right.
That's why it needs the loan from the general fund.
That's why,
Right.
so we're going to move the funds in, and we're only getting 9 million from Exide right now, roughly, and we hope to get more.
14.
14, 9, 14. Okay, and then what other sites are you working on then out of that account? Is there 1, 2, 10, 20?
Lots.
We have information about 9,800 sites statewide that are contaminated. We have varying degrees of information about those sites. We have about 120 sites, I think, that we have more complete information on, and in any given year, we have active cleanups on about 50 sites.
Then getting closer to Exide, it helped when you said that the Exide company was there from the early 1900s. So I wanted to know which came first, the homes or the factory, because Vernon is not a residential. I think you've got 8 residents that live in Vernon, unless they just built some townhomes. So it's not like a city. So it's neighboring cities that are impacted, and I'm wondering which came first, the factory or the homes?
The Exide Technologies has only owned the site since, I think, the late 1980s, might be the early 1980s. Prior to Exide's ownership of the site, there were other owners who conducted lead smelting at that site, and that work dates back to the early 1900s. So it goes back quite a ways. I've been in the community. Some of those homes look to me like they date, they're bungalow-style homes that were probably built in the, 1920s. There may be some that are older. There's also some newer construction in the area, and certainly depending on which communities you're in, you would see different vintage housing. But the housing stock closer to the Exide site seems to be older than farther away.
Okay, because my concern was, are you going to have to lift some of these homes? So you're saying probably not.
I don't believe that would be necessary, no.
If it's under the house,
And the lead we're most concerned about is lead that is in soil. So some of the properties have, they're completely concrete yards, and those property owners typically are not interested in having cleanup work done. There isn't a lot of exposed soil that would be cleaned up.
and then what is the Fed's role? What is the EPA doing with their Superfund? How much do they fund for this?
This is not a federal Superfund site. We have talked with US EPA about whether it would meet their criteria for listing as a federal Superfund site. Preliminarily, they don't think that it does. I understand there may be some requests of them to look at that further, but their indication to us is that it probably does not meet the criteria. They do participate in the advisory group that we have that includes community members and federal, state, local government representatives, as well as people with different areas of expertise, including academic researchers. This group has 37 members. It has been meeting up until recently about monthly. I think we've had 7 meetings since it was created last June. And we're moving to every other month meetings going forward, just because things need to evolve each, between meetings, so there's enough to talk about. But US EPA does participate in that advisory group, and we certainly consult with them when we have questions about how they have carried out cleanups on other very large lead sites in the nation. There are a couple that we're aware of, and we're trying to learn from some of the earlier issues that they encountered at those sites.
Thank you, Director Lee. Thank you.
Senator Morlock, all good questions.
Oh, gosh, thanks.
Yes, no, we all learn a lot. Senator Roth, then Senator Stone, and Senator Allen. Senator Roth has stepped out. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Director. Thank you for the presentation. I, like my colleague, Mr. Morlock, learned about this yesterday. So prior to yesterday, I never knew about the Exide facility. But would you say, because of the contamination that exists here today, that this is a public safety emergency as of now?
Our appraisal of the situation is that so far we have not encountered levels of contamination that would constitute an imminent danger to health and safety. However, there is an ongoing chronic exposure concern because of some of the levels of lead we're finding in the community.
So that's a concern, that we have families that are being exposed to these unmitigated sites at this time, which mean that more children are getting sick, more adults are getting sick, which raises the concern for me that you're going to be doing job training. That's going to create more delays, maybe even more expense. Is the purpose of creating these jobs because there's not professionals out there that can expeditiously come in and do the testing and do the mitigation? So what is the reason for training people to do a job that I think we have trained professionals that could come in on a moment's notice and quickly mitigate this for a number of reasons? One, because of the health and safety of the residents that are living there that have to wait for this training and wait for this delayed response. But more importantly, I think also, is that I'm sure that this company, Exide, is very much aware of the potential liability that they could be seeing. And while I appreciate that you're getting a $176 million loan from the general fund, I very rarely see, and I didn't see any contingency along with this $176 million, and rarely do government projects come in at what they're projected to be. We could be looking at $250 million here by it's all said and done, to not only test, but maybe more, to go out there and remediate these properties. And I'm not even sure what the process is. If you just have to dig up the soil, take it to a landfill, and replace it with fresh soil, we don't even know what that is. But wouldn't it be better that we just bring in the professionals and let's get this job done to make sure that we keep this company solvent long enough as we add the costs? And then, I know you're not a lawyer, but I think that we're looking at tens of millions of dollars minimum in liability of this company. And maybe legal counsel for the state should look at liens, letter of credits, requiring a bond to make sure that our general fund is going to get paid back. Another follow-up question is, if we didn't have a company that was solvent that could pay us back, would we be utilizing the general fund to pay for the remediation, or how would we pay for it? A lot of questions.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Let me assure you, first of all, that we do, in fact, have quite a number of attorneys, not only within the department, but also at the State Attorney General's office, working on this case and taking a number of steps and ensuring the department takes the steps needed to give us the best cost recovery case that we could possibly have. So we are expecting that we will be recovering costs. I am going to do my best to recover every penny that I possibly can, and I consider that very urgent. Getting the cleanup done is also urgent, as you observed, and the department already has cleanup underway in these communities. In the current budget, the legislature approved $7 million for the department to do testing and cleanup in this community based on its cleanup of properties that were identified in the prior round of testing, and the current testing is to allow us to test up to 1,500 properties. And so that work is ongoing. We have also begun the job skills training program. So while we have contractors doing the testing and cleanup work in the community now, they are open to hiring local labor as part of their workforce as the skilled local labor becomes available. So the jobs development program or portion of this funding project will provide job skills to the community members who are interested in joining the crews that are being run by the contractors who are hired with the funding that is part of this appropriation.
Training programs is not going to prolong the mitigation that we're trying to achieve in making this a safe environment for these families.
No, we are moving ahead with the testing and cleanup. We will be doing environmental review of the larger cleanup that will be beginning with this appropriation, and that will take probably until next April to complete, assuming that there's no streamlining, and also that there are no legal challenges that hold it up. We expect that it'll be complete next April. During that time, we will still be doing all of the testing. We will be doing all of the job skills training, so I don't believe there will be any delay associated with the job skills training. And this provides some real tangible and immediate benefits to the community in terms of revitalizing what is a very, very impacted community, both not just environmentally, but also economically.
You mentioned that you have a lot on your plate, roughly 9,800 potential toxic sites in the state of California. How many of those 9,800 would you say rise to this level of being so toxic and problematic?
I wish it were a small number. It's probably a large number. We don't have, we are aware of the 9,800 sites, and US EPA estimates there could be as many as 100,000 contaminated sites in the state of California alone. Some of the contamination is fairly minor or very localized, could be from leaking underground storage tanks, or dry cleaners that left perchloroethylene in the soil under the facility, or up to very large, complex sites, and we do have a number of those. So generally speaking, the department uses funds in the site remediation account that I so poorly explained to Senator Morelek, to initiate the investigation of these sites, to identify responsible parties, to get critical health and safety cleanups begun, and then we cost recover and have the responsible parties pay for the ongoing cleanup work.
And then lastly, it's very unfortunate when we have situations like this and we have a number of state agencies, your agency, to oversee the health and safety of our communities. What have we learned to prevent any type of debacle like this from occurring in the future? Do we have enough protections in our policies and laws in the state of California to ensure that we don't duplicate these issues of the past?
Thank you for that question. There are a number of things that we have learned conclusively from the Exide situation. The chairman, Senator Leno, asked me the same question about a year ago when we first announced that Exide was closing. First and foremost, we absolutely will not ever again have a facility that operates for 30 years without a final permit decision. Exide Technologies was the last interim status document permit the department had. Interim status documents are allowed when the law changes and a facility becomes subject to permitting under the federal permitting program for hazardous waste facilities. facilities to allow the facility to get an application in and to continue operating while the department evaluates the permit. We took way too long, obviously, with the Exide permit, and we have undergone in the last year and a half a very rigorous overhaul of our permitting program. We did 3 Lean Six Sigma projects through a pilot program with GoBiz, and under those Lean Six Sigma projects, we have increased the efficiency of our permitting program. We have increased the effectiveness of our permitting program. It is more transparent and more accountable now. We have a number of metrics that we're tracking so that we, you, others who are interested can know that we are processing our permits in a timely way, that the permits are effective. We are moving out throughout other departments in the other portions of the department's program to do the same kind of work to make sure that our enforcement efforts, our cleanup efforts, and the other work that we do is as efficient and effective as it can be.
Is there anything in the state of California known as a decommissioning permit? In other words, we have industries that we know are dealing with toxic chemicals. They decide to abandon the site, that they need to take a permit to ensure that the site is left clean?
Yes, indeed. Under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which is a federal program that the department implements, not only do we issue permits to large hazardous waste facilities, they are also required to have a process that they go through when they are closing that is similar to a decommissioning process. It is a closure plan. We review the closure plan. They are required to post financial assurance before they close to ensure that there is funding in place to cover the cost of closing the site. And then as part of the closure and post-closure work that we do with the site, we have them investigate not only the site itself, but the area around the site to see if there's contamination, and they're required to clean it up.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the courtesy.
Thank you, Senator Stone. And I think Director Lee answered your question rather well. Your rightful concern that there could be any delay. So it's really a parallel track, that the testing's ongoing, the training happens simultaneously. And I view the training as a bit of human mitigation. This is such a devastated collection of neighborhoods that it's a little something we can give back to them, because tens of millions of dollars are coming into their community. They should benefit at least a little bit from it. That's how I view the training. So Senator Roth and Senator Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, Director Lee, I want to thank you for your responsiveness and the responsiveness of your department with respect to our Ag Park site in Riverside. Very much appreciated by me, and I know by the community. Second, with respect to the Job and Development Training Program, what portion of the $176.6 million is allocated to that?
We are currently proposing about $1.2 million will fund the job training program.
Okay, well, I mean, it's not a huge issue. I guess my question is, this is general fund money. Why are we not looking to U.S. DOL's WIOA program for, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act job training program for this money?
We are anxious to leverage any additional funding we can to improve the effectiveness of the overall project within the community. So we are working with US EPA on the design of the program. I can check with my staff to see if they have looked into the program you're referencing. It's not one I'm personally familiar with, but we will follow up on it.
I think that money flows through EDD or the parent.
Well, I would note, actually, the administration has a larger workforce development proposal as part of our January budget of around $200 million for kind of to utilize the federal funds in a regional model with our community colleges. As the directors testified, with this particular program, they are looking to work with community colleges and others already in the area that would provide this training and certification programs. So ultimately, I do think there's a synergy here, depending on what's decided in that particular pot of money within Prop 98.
Right. Well, I guess my point is every dollar in the general fund that we don't have to use for this, we can use for something else, and there are plenty of something else's I've come to find out on this budget committee, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd take a look at that. But thank you again for what you do for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roth. Senator Ellen.
Well, one of my questions was already asked and answered in the discussion with Senator Stone, and with regards to this extraordinary situation where the public is being put on the hook for this disaster and this tragedy, and it's an example of why it's so important that we be really aggressive and engaged on issues of environmental protection, and because ultimately we all end up having to pay for the costs associated with commercial activity that's dangerous and ends up impacting everyone's health. I'd like to just know a little bit, kind of following a bit more on the extent to which we're looking for other sources. Could you talk a bit about Superfund and possible availability, other federal sources of funding that we could be looking at as well?
I'm sorry, which funding were you referring to?
Superfund money.
Oh, Superfund money. I just didn't hear you properly. We have spoken with US EPA about whether this site would qualify as a federal Superfund site. Their initial assessment of it is that it would not, and I don't believe they have any plans to list it. If they were to list it, the state would be responsible for providing a state match for the construction of what is known as the remedy, and then we are responsible for 100% of the operation of the remedy. So even when federal Superfund dollars do flow into a state to support cleanup activities, the state is on the hook for providing a portion of the funding. And so while we have explored this with US EPA, they are not, as far as I know, planning to propose a listing of this site. We are reaching out to use other federal funds, however, to address some of the contamination in the area. I did mention lead-based paint is a source of lead contamination that is present at a number of these properties, and we are working on a grant application for a HUD grant to conduct lead-based paint stabilization at properties where we find vulnerable populations are exposed. We have also offered to partner with the local governments in that grant application, and we're trying to leverage other lead-based paint funding that's available in these communities so that when we go in and do a soil cleanup on the site, the lead-based paint also gets stabilized so that a structure that has deteriorating lead-based paint on the outside of it, where it's flaking off into the dirt, doesn't recontaminate soil that we have already cleaned up.
Okay, so that's good that you're pursuing that. Could you give me an understanding of why it is that this wouldn't be eligible for Superfund money?
I think the simple answer is there are many, many contaminated sites nationally. The Superfund program is hugely oversubscribed, so they have a very small amount of money that is available for Superfund site cleanup work each year in each region of the country, and they carefully prioritize the sites that they list based on the funding they have available, and that would be based largely on the extent of contamination at the site.
So I mean, this, it's absolutely true that Vernon is just one city, and yet if you look at the, if you look at the chart that was in the LA Times just a couple days ago about how much this contamination is spread and how many people are impacted, it's pretty extraordinary. So you mean to tell me that there are many more toxic disasters of a much greater scale all over the country that are eating up Superfund monies that knock us down the list? Is that effectively what you're saying?
Yes, with the caveat that Superfund dollars are allocated regionally. We're in Region 9 of US EPA, and so we would be looking at funds that are spent within US EPA's Region 9 as the priority list of sites for remediation. So it would be within California and the other states within Region 9. And they have insufficient funds to address all of the sites that are already listed, and so I think that, and again, I can't speak for US EPA. They have their own criteria for evaluating sites and listing them, but their indication to us is that this site would not be eligible for listing as a Superfund site.
I'm just trying to have a better understanding of how they make these decisions. This seems to be, a pretty extraordinary example of a toxic disaster that requires public funds for remediation. And I just, I'd love to get a little more information, I suppose, about how it is that.
I would be happy to see if we can get some more information together for you and come brief you if that would be something that would be worthwhile for you.
Would appreciate that.
Senator Einlaw, I think the bottom line here is that there's not sufficient federal funds to deal with all the sites already identified on the list. So even if you're on the list, you may not get funded, and we're not even on the list. So, and it's not our decision anyway, so.
No, I understand. We're having to, we don't have money for the Cal Access. There's so many smaller things that we seem not be able to pull together the money from. Now all of a sudden we're giving $176 million out of general fund.
Well, we're loading. I'd like to all join hands before we adjourn to say, and we'll get every penny back.
I should hope so,
Yes.
but
And you'll be around.
the company's right. Maybe when I'm termed out, but the company seems to be in this interesting place, and I would love more information about that as well. But I also understand that there's continuing litigation, so there's only so much you can say. But I think we need to be determined to get the money back.
Right. Colleagues, any other questions before we ask for public comment? Great. Director Lee, you've answered a lot of questions and answered them very well. We thank you, and also for stepping into probably one of the toughest jobs in America. You're doing very well. We thank you. And thank you, Ms. Costa, for your presentation as well. Anyone here who would like to speak publicly, please step up to our microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Harding. I'm the interim director for the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, and I'm here on the behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors strongly supports this package of legislation, SB 93 and AB 118, because these resources are desperately needed to support the cleanup and the assessment of the communities surrounding the Exide facility. We thank the administration, we thank Governor Brown, we thank the legislative leadership, and we thank your committee for hearing this issue, and we hope that we can get a vote of support to get these resources for these communities surrounding Exide. For many years, those residents have been exposed to, as you heard today, lead, benzene, arsenic, an arsenal of chemicals. And the elevated exposure to those substances, those residents will carry that elevated risk for cancer for the rest of their lives. We've been, the Board of Supervisors allocated $2 million that we use to demonstrate a methodology for rapid assessment of properties, and as Director Lee mentioned, we were able to assess 500 properties in less than 10 days. And we've been working collaboratively with the department to make sure that we're in coordination on this work. Our public health nurses went out the day after we did the testing to explain what this testing was showing, to talk to the families about getting the children, any children that were there, tested, to link them to healthcare services. We're also doing outreach to the medical community in this area to make sure that they're looking for the right things in screening the clients that come. And in fact, this week we're going to be doing a health fair in Bell Gardens with the Montebello School District, having free blood lead testing in the area and providing information about lead poisoning and other conditions, and the need for additional screening for these residents. So we hope to continue to work closely with the department. We thank them for their work, and we hope we get a vote of support on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. Please deliver our thanks to the board for their participation and engagement.
Eddie Moreno on behalf of Sierra Club California, in full support of the package, particularly the public participation, the job training pieces, which we see as an excellent opportunity for these people to benefit from a very unfortunate situation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Anthony Gonsalves, I represent the City of Cudahy and the City of Vernon. They're in support of the two-bill package. I want to thank the Pro Tem, Assembly Member Santiago, Supervisor Solis for her leadership on this. This is a very poor area. In the University of Chicago study, 3 of the cities in this area were in the top 10 poorest communities in the nation. And so they truly need your help. We appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonsalves.
Sylvia Solis on behalf of the Office of City of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. We are grateful to the governor and legislative leadership for the expediting of this funding for the cleanup and testing to protect the health and safety of the residents of this community. So we thank you very much.
Ms. Solis. All right, colleagues, we have a motion from Senator Pavley on AB 118. There are no other questions, comments, concerns from the committee? We will call the roll.
AB 118, the motion is due pass. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, aye. Allen? Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Glazer? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Pan? Pan, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye. This 13-0.
Bill is out 13-0, and with no other business before us, we are adjourned. Thank you.